Good morning. It's the NBA Strategy Show for this Monday. Joined alongside with me is Adam to talk about this Monday 9-game NBA DFS slate. Adam, how was your weekend?
It was good. Made a little bit yesterday. Lost a little bit Saturday, but yeah, it was a good weekend. How was yours?
Uh, NFL DFS has been pretty subpar for me this season. Yesterday, FanDuel had their fan championship, and I completed another air ball in that slate. I had some of my tickets cashed, so it was a wild late night hammer slate, which I was fully exposed to. But Justin Herbert was pretty brutal, and I thought he was in a really good spot, so that really let me down. But I had a good NBA weekend, but I just more and more as the season goes along. Uh, just more focusing on NBA as we get near Christmas Day. But 9-game slate, tons of news already to take a look on. Ton of teams on a handful of teams on a back to back. But first game is first. We'll go ahead and get started to Utah and Cleveland. But also shout out to our presenting sponsor, Prize Picks. We'll touch on an exciting offer that they have. They've kind of revolutionized the NBA player props game and just props in general, where you can just bet on a flurry of props night in and night out. Take advantage of them. Take advantage of that special offer we have going. Shout out to producer Jordan, who will probably drop a link in chat shortly. But Utah and Cleveland. Cleveland is 6-point favorites, 222 total. This is obviously a matchup between teams that traded away players to each other in the offseason. Donovan Mitchell got shipped from Utah to Cleveland and Markkanen to the other side. And obviously some other secondary and tertiary pieces on both sides of this team. But it's a Utah and Cleveland team where, this being the first game on the slate, it's going to be interesting to see what the ownership looks like. There are some solid tournament options on both sides of this game, but let's start on the Utah side of things. Obviously, you're going to look at guys like Markkanen and Clarkson just for tournament upside players, but the more and more we look at this team, everyone's priced appropriately. They're mainly healthy outside of Colin Sexton. So it's not that a team that we can take advantage of missing players and mispriced options. This Utah team across the board just seems appropriately priced. I am just very neutral plays on this slate. If you get to them, sure. I don't have an argument one way or the other. The way things stand right now, it's a Cleveland matchup where I'll be willing to look elsewhere on this slate the way things stand right now. How do you feel about this Utah team? Does anyone stick out to you in
No,
particular?
that's where I'm at as well. You've got pretty much a correctly priced team, like you were saying, and then also a very unappealing matchup here against Cleveland. So to me, Utah is just one of these teams where, if you get to a little bit of $6,800 Jordan Clarkson, that's fine. He's averaged about a fantasy point per minute in the games he's played with Conley this year. He should give you 34 plus minutes if this game's competitive. Lauri Markkanen, 8,200, 1.19 DraftKings points per minute, should also give you 34 plus minutes, but 8,200. And you mentioned it kind of at the top. We already have a lot of injury news. Probably will get more throughout the day. So right now, it's not looking like a slate where you're going to be playing a lot of like, oh, well, this guy seems decent. I'll go there. So I don't really anticipate getting to a whole lot of Utah here. But if I did, taking shots on Clarkson, Markkanen, $5,500 Kelly Olynyk, those are all reasonable. I just think you're going to get a lot of plays that look better as we go through this show.
Yeah, and I think that kind of wraps up this team. And there'll be I think, a couple other teams that we feel very similar to the same sentiment we had here. But before we go to Cleveland, if everyone can hit that like and subscribe button for us, that'd be fantastic. As we near 85,000 subscribers, that'd be awesome if we can somehow get there by Christmas Day. And that like button, if you guys are tuning in later throughout the day, hit that like button for us. We appreciate that on this holiday week as we near Christmas. Cleveland, on the other side of things, Cleveland is another team where a lot of these guys are mainly healthy, but the one guy who potentially missed last game that we saw was Lamar Stevens, and I believe Lamar Stevens has already been ruled out for today. And Lamar Stevens is kind of an important piece because of the minutes he was playing for a stretch there. But him being gone, it's they're big. Those four guys: Mitchell, Allen, Garland, and Mobley. I always get to them in tournaments. I always like to get above the field on a guy like Jared Allen on FanDuel. Mobley's been kind of priced appropriately all season long, it feels like. Mitchell playing his former team, does he want to show them up? I have no idea, but I like Mitchell's tournament upside tonight. And just because you're going to look for some guys who have tournament ceilings, that's Donovan Mitchell for you. And I think that Darius Garland has that as well. And Karis LeVert also got a couple extra minutes with no Lamar Stevens, it felt like last time. Isaac Okoro cracked the rotation, and Chetty Osman's also there as well. Talk to me about this Cleveland team and who sticks out to us for tournaments tonight. kind of another team that is missing Lamar Stevens. So there are minutes available for some other guys, but he doesn't take up that much usage. So it's not that big of a piece that's missing. It's just like minutes need to be filled up by some other guys. Give
Yeah,
me
this is certainly, I think, the more appealing side of this game. As far as the Lamar Stevens spot goes, we had Isaac Okoro start in his place. From a fantasy standpoint, that's not super useful because Okoro has averaged half a fantasy point per minute this year. So not really the type of guy that, him cracking the starting lineup is going to move him into being a great DFS option. But there are a lot of pieces to like here. I think every starter except for Okoro looks good. They're all pulling 12 to 16% ownership on DraftKings. Donovan Mitchell coming in at 8,900. Obviously relatively scoring dependent, but 1.24 DraftKings points per minute this year with a 31.5% usage rate. Garland's averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute. They should both play around 36 minutes in a favorable spot. So getting to either of those guys looks pretty appealing. Jared Allen still playing big minutes, played about 34 and a half in regulation last game. We've been seeing 36 plus in most games since he came back from injury. He's only $6,500, pulling 12% ownership. He's averaged about a fantasy point per minute this year, so he looks pretty good. Evan Mobley, also about a fantasy point per minute, should play into the mid-30s. So all four of those guys just look like solid mid-range options. And then you can take some shots on Kevin Love or Karis LeVert off the bench as well. Love, 3,700, played about 15 minutes last game, but prior to that, we had seen his playing time increase in 4 straight games since coming back. He had played 19 minutes 2 games ago. He's a very good point per minute guy. It's just a matter of, does he get 14 or 15 minutes, or does he get up to 18 to 20? If he does get up around 20, he's probably going to be a pretty good value at 3,700. But again, we do just have some really good value that we'll get to later in the slate as well. LeVert should play around 30 to 32 minutes. Did pick up a couple more minutes, like you said, last game. Even excluding overtime, played about 33 minutes in regulation. He's averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute this year. So I don't mind taking some shots on Love or LeVert, but I think the Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, Garland pieces are the priorities from this team.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it right there. For those of you guys who are playing on Prize Picks, so a couple of free picks from our data and tools team. Take advantage of the Jordan Clarkson prop line. Right now, there's a prop line of 3.5, and we haven't projected slightly under 4.5. Expected win percentage of 64%. So he is all there. It's one of the better expected win percentages that we have based on our data and tools algorithm. So take advantage of that Jordan Clarkson player prop for this Utah and Cleveland matchup over there on Price Picks. And you can take advantage of it, and you can get that 1 month free of Stokastic plus Platinum when you do make your first deposit on Price Picks if you haven't played there yet. So take advantage of our sponsor, and shout out to them specifically. On to the next game we go, and it's a game where Toronto is taking on Philly. Toronto is 7-point underdogs with a 221.5 total. This Toronto team we were going to them because of no OG Anunoby. There were some guys who were mispriced there, but now OG Anunoby continues to be out, and Gary Trent is now also out. And there's going to be minutes to be opened up and some usage, a little bit of usage. So, but it's mainly going to be sucked up by their big three in Siakam, Van Vliet, and Barnes, and Nick Nurse. He doesn't give a damn. He's going to play them 40 minutes if he can. So I think those three guys in tournaments in a Philly spot, I'm all about getting above the field on these three players just because of the upside in their minutes, barring any foul trouble. Yeah, it's a Philly spot where not really, it doesn't really matter defensively for them. I think the minutes just are so nice, and minutes in NBA DFS mean so much for these three guys, and I'm excited to get above the field on these three players. But there are some minutes opening up. We saw Delano Banton also crack the rotation. They've been starting Koloko some games. Some games Koloko's been coming off the bench, and Thad Young was starting there. So keep an eye on who actually starts in this Embiid matchup. And then Juancho Hernan-Gomez was also getting significant amount of minutes, a lot more than he's used to. So all the secondary guys / tertiary guys on this Toronto team, I kind of shrugged my shoulders. Chris Boucher's there. He always gets some ownership, but even him, I'm not even that excited at this moment. But he just always, if he were to somehow get the outlier fantasy point per minute game, which he certainly has, I'm okay with not getting too much of him. Talk to me about the Toronto Big Three and the rest of this team with no Gary Trent and OG.
Yeah, so the big question mark, like you said, is who's actually going to start this game, because we had seen Thaddeus Young starting, then they went to Christian Koloko. Last game at halftime, they actually went with Malachi Flynn over Koloko. So in 2 games now, we've seen Malachi Flynn play substantial minutes, and again, started the second half last game. So at 3,100, I do think that there is reason to be interested in Flynn. Now, it is still, if he's coming off the bench especially, it is still risky because, you could always just, at the drop of a hat, see Delano Banton take those minutes, for example. But we have seen, 2 games in a row where Flynn has played a lot. He's only 3,100. So he makes for an interesting value option. Siakam, Barnes, Van Vliet, we know those guys are going to play huge minutes as long as the game's competitive and they're not in foul trouble. So they're all going to look pretty good at their respective salaries. Van Vliet has gotten a little bit more expensive, coming up to 8,500. So he's only projected for 2% ownership. But we have Barnes coming in at 7. We have Siakam coming in at 11. Just the playing time is going to make them look pretty solid. And then Chris Boucher at 4,600, always a wild card, like you said. Only played like 16 minutes 2 games ago. Played 24 minutes yesterday. Did get some garbage time runs, so hard to say if he was actually going to get those 24, 25 minutes or not. He played about 12 minutes in the first half as well. So reasonable tournament play, but also very risky. But I think Siakam, Barnes, Van Vliet, if you can get to those guys, their minutes are going to look good. Hernan Gomez, 3,700, played 40 minutes 2 games ago, played about 33 or 23 rather yesterday, did lose 5 to 6 minutes at the end of the game. So probably was going to play around 28. I think that's a pretty good expectation, is him to be in that 28 to 30 minute range, assuming he starts.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep an eye on the starting lineup here. And keep in mind, I do think this rotation right now is a little volatile as Nick Nurse kind of is carving it out matchup to matchup. So that's really it about the Toronto side of things. Any final thoughts on Toronto?
Nope.
All right. Everyone, I want to check out this limited time offer from BetMGM where you can take advantage of a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Find that link in the description and take advantage of that BetMGM offer we have going. This is a limited time offer. It wouldn't shock me if this is one of the last couple of weeks that they have this going as the calendar year flips over. So take advantage of that over there to BetMGM as well. Great, exciting offer we have. Hit that like button. On to the Philly side we go, and it's Embiid and Harden for me. Usually on most nights this season, I've been heavily above the field on Harden, and it has worked out for me. Embiid and Harden look fantastic. Tobias Harris is expected to return. They continue to miss Tyrese Maxey. He should be returning shortly. Maybe, I don't know if it's they play Christmas Day, but it should be something. There were some news that he might play Christmas Day, but keep an eye on that situation as we progress forward towards Christmas. But Embiid and Harden, I always have significant interest in them in tournaments. I really like going to Embiid tonight, as Harden. But Harris and Melton and everyone else on this Philly team, I kind of brush them aside because they're such usage-dependent guys in the two-man game they have going. And there's just not enough usage, in my opinion, to get filtered around. D'Anthony Melton, where you get that steals bonus over there on FanDuel, maybe he can pan out. He definitely had a great game on Friday night, but it's really just Embiid and Harden. And when both of those guys are healthy, I'm always under the field on Harris. And there were some games that had burned me, but I'm okay if Tobias Harris is going to burn me. How do you feel about the Philly situation tonight?
I'm on the same page with you. I approach this team pretty much the same way night to night when Harden and Embiid are both in. You have Harden at 9,900 on DraftKings. You have Embiid at 11.5. They've played 11 games together now this year, about 1.37 DraftKings points per minute for Harden in 38 minutes per game, Embiid averaging 35 minutes per game and 1.52 DraftKings points per minute. It's just going to make them both look really good, especially because we do have plenty of value already on this slate. So it shouldn't be difficult to get to them either. They're both pulling mid-teens ownership on DraftKings. They both, Embiid's projected for a 15% chance of being optimal. Harden's at 19%. So both are pulling ownership in those ranges. They both look like very good plays. Beyond that, there's just not really much I like. If you have Tobias Harris or D'Anthony Melton, like fine, they should both play plenty of minutes, but neither one is going to be a high usage guy as long as Embiid and Harden are in. You're basically reliant on Harris being extremely efficient or Melton running into a bunch of steals, which sure, it can happen, but we have a 9-game slate. There's just going to be a lot of plays that look better.
Yeah, it's a 9-game slate. It's just Embiid and Harden for me, and I'm trying to move on based on if there's any unforeseen news, which can certainly happen, 9-game slate. But if it's on the weeknights so far this NBA season, the teams have been pretty good. But, man, have you seen these Saturday slates of late? It's just like they're all hungover and they take Saturday off, it feels like, this NBA.
Yeah, I think it's been 2 or 3 Saturdays in a row now where I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go out and watch soccer, or go out and watch football, whichever. And then I'm like, oh, and I'll come home and play basketball. And then I'm sitting there watching the games. I just keep getting alerts of entire teams being ruled out. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to go do that.
Yeah, no, it's been pretty much like, what the fuck? And it's been really annoying of just playing DFS because, yeah, those are advantages that we should be able to take advantage of. But when there's just a surplus of when we haven't even, when players and rotation combinations have never happened, really makes things a little bit more difficult than usual. But on to the next game we go. Orlando's been on quite the hot streak. I think they are winners of 6 straight. 7.5 dogs against this Atlanta team. 230.5 total. One of the higher ones on the slate so far tonight. I think it's on the upper third. I believe the second or third highest tonight. Orlando takes on Atlanta, and Orlando obviously got back Markelle Fultz recently. And maybe Markelle Fultz is the reason why they're getting hot, but he's questionable right now. This is a back end of a back-to-back for Markelle. And with Markelle Fultz
No, it's
questionable,
not.
they played last night.
And he's not questionable.
Oh, he's not?
No, their injury report's out.
Oh, it is that?
Yeah, no, he's not on it.
Oh, okay. But they did play yesterday, right?
If they did, it was during the day.
Yeah, they played yesterday afternoon against Boston.
Okay. I was going to say, their injury report being out made me think it wasn't a back-to-back, but I guess it was during the day.
Okay, yeah. No, it is a back-to-back.
Oh, yeah, you're right. They did play Boston yesterday.
Yeah, so it is a back-to-back for Markelle Fultz. So with Fultz being not questionable, it's a back-to-back. I don't know if he's going to play, but the rest of this team, with everyone being back, they're also just priced appropriately. And Banchero obviously has tournament upside. It's going to come down to earth after that hot start before he got hurt. Franz Wagner is just consistent there. Nothing too exciting for me. I'm always looking for other players in that price range where Franz is. If Markelle is out, I'll have interest in Cole Anthony. But the rest of this team, Bol Bol's minutes have fallen down to earth a little bit. I don't have much interest in this Orlando team. I know it's a great Atlanta spot, but maybe it's just Banchero for me, and I'm maybe moving on. It will depend on the Fultz situation come the start of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Fultz is the guy pulling ownership here at 15% on DraftKings. He's 5,100. Barring foul trouble, blowouts, injury, like we've seen all of that recently, but you're typically getting around 30 minutes from him. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. So he's just going to project pretty well at 5,100, especially in a favorable matchup. So I think he makes sense. Banchero at 7,700, Franz Wagner at 6,300. Both reasonable, last guy in type tournament plays because they do give you a nice ceiling, but there's just going to be a lot of options in their price range that look similar. For the season, Banchero's at 1.09 DraftKings points per minute. Franz Wagner's at 0.95, 25% usage rate for Wagner, 29 for Banchero. Mo Wagner's also been playing big minutes. He's just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy. He comes in at 5,700, only pulling 1% ownership. I think if you kind of want to gamble on any of those guys, they're fine. But I would think that I get the Fultz the most here. Cole Anthony's sort of interesting as well at 5K. We've seen his playing time sort of be all over the place. On average, you're getting like 22 to 24 minutes, but there are some games where if he plays well, he can play a bit more. Also, if we were to get news that Fultz wasn't going to play, Anthony would certainly look better as well.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Fultz did play on the back end of the back-to-back earlier in December, I believe. He has played a back-to-back. So let me see. I forget how many minutes he played last night, but
he played 30 last night.
He played 30 last night. So yeah, just keep an eye on that situation. Anything can really happen there. But good Atlanta spot where I do think some of these guys can shock you. Did you any strong sentiment towards Mo Wagner? I know he's been playing quite a bit of minutes and has had some good games. It's always difficult for me to go to Mo Wagner, but any final thoughts on Mo?
I like the upside at low ownership. He's 5,700. He's averaged 0.93 DraftKings points per minute. There's a part of me that just keeps waiting for the game where his minutes disappear, but we also haven't gotten that yet. He's just been clearly playing ahead of Mo Bamba. Bamba's backing him up. They're splitting 48 minutes. And so you just keep getting 30 minutes from Mo Wagner. So it's not a guy that I expect to just be jamming into lineups. But right now we have him projected for 1% ownership on DraftKings, 5% chance of being optimal. So, clearly a low probability play, but also something that is going a little bit under-owned, I think.
Yeah, and it's just this Atlanta matchup. There's a lot of things that I feel like maybe a couple of players could break through here. So keep an eye on the news with over there in Orlando. Onto the Atlanta side we go. This team has been the Trae Young show, but he hasn't really worked out for me of late. Unfortunately, I've been getting well above the field on Trae as they were without DeJounte Murray. And DeJounte Murray is, I believe, expected to return today. I could be wrong.
He's questionable.
He is questionable.
So
there's a chance he can return. Yes. And John Collins is the one that I did see last night that he is also questionable. And this team could be fully healthy. But I'll still have some tournament interest in Trae Young for sure if everyone is healthy. I'll have to see what the minutes situation for John Collins coming back from a lower body injury, as is DeJounte Murray. If they were both to play, I could see them being on a minutes limit, but we'll see how this Pacers training staff does it, because it was different with Bogdanovich as he rolled out 30 plus minutes in his return right off the bat. But Trae Young looks like a solid play with or without these guys out. Even if these guys play, I still like going to Trae Young. But the rest of the team, Okongwu is certainly in play, but he's been tough, and the price has gone up. Where I do think there's some other better centers on the slate that I'm willing to target. Talk to me about the Hawks situation and with these couple of these guys who are questionable and could return.
Yeah, so I mean, the Murray and Collins news is huge. Trae Young has been disappointing in the games without DeJounte Murray, but if Murray is out, you still expect Young to be better than if Murray is in. So that's going to play a big role. John Collins also, if he's out, you do get some more usage, even though he hasn't been a high usage guy anyway this year. You would also get either Jalen Johnson or Trent Forrest in the starting lineup, most likely. But that doesn't really matter a ton for DFS. Also, if Murray is back, you're probably getting Bogdanovich going back to the bench. I'm not sure, but certainly could after he started the last game. So there's a lot of moving parts there. Young's going to look good one way or the other, but again, should look a little bit better if Murray is out. Okongwu looks fine. He didn't play as many minutes as anticipated last game. Obviously, part of that was because it was a blowout. He didn't play in the fourth quarter, but even in the first half, he only played about 26 minutes, if I can do math right. 24 minutes. He did have some foul trouble, so maybe would have played a little bit more, but I expect him to play 28 to 30 minutes typically as a starter. He has only averaged 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute in his starts, and you have seen Trae Young, cut. He's not a high usage guy anyway, but you have seen Trae Young knock down his usage rate a few points, which isn't really surprising. So I think Okongwu looks decent. I talked about it on a show the other day that I pretty much jammed him in last slate, and then like 2 minutes into the slate, realized that I had kind of messed up and had my projection on him being too high because I hadn't accounted for Trae Young, and then obviously it ended up going poorly, so it just like really pissed me off. But still, at 5,200, he's going to look fine. He's pulling 15% ownership. Don't mind getting there. It is a good spot. Beyond that, if we assume Murray and Collins are in, I don't think there's a lot to like. Bogdanovich probably still plays around 30 minutes if he comes off the bench, probably plays a little bit more if he does stay in the starting lineup. He's getting 5% ownership. If you take Murray out, I think Bogdanovich continues to look pretty good. His price tag is climbing, but the minutes are there. Trae Young, certainly cut. The more minutes he plays with Trae Young, the less appealing because of how high usage Young is. But they did also stagger Bogdanovich and Young's minutes last game, so you weren't getting all of the minutes alongside Young. So far this year, 95 minutes with Young on the floor. Bogdanovich has still averaged 0.96 DraftKings points per minute. So I think it's really just, if he's coming off the bench and likely playing around 30, it gets kind of difficult to pay 6,500 for him. If he's starting and probably playing 32 to 34, I'm still certainly interested in going there.
Yeah, and that was a great breakdown of the Atlanta situation with those guys too questionable. That's some really important news on this slate, just because of potential extra usage and extra minutes that could open up some other players. So keep an eye on that throughout the day. We have a ton of NBA content. Obviously, deeper dive and live before lock will pretty much lead you up to start and break down all the news that comes out up to lock. So make sure to tune in later today as well. Also, if you guys are listening to us on any podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. Those go a long way for us across any platform you find us. We appreciate your support over there as well. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, hit that like button for us. On to the Milwaukee and New Orleans game. Potential finals preview here with Giannis and Drew. Middleton is is ruled out for today, but it's the return of dusty old Joe Ingles. He will be making his Bucks debut. He is not on the injury report right now. And it should be an exciting game to watch in terms of a basketball perspective. But Giannis, Drew, obviously both of these guys have tournament upside. Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis don't look as appealing when Giannis is back. And I don't know what the wing minutes are going to look like with Joe Ingles. Who does he take minutes away from? My guess is he's going to chew into some Connaughton, some Allen minutes, is my guess. And maybe have some ball handling duty taken away from George Hill. We'll see what this minutes look like. Even Javon Carter might lose some minutes because Joe Ingles can bring the ball up to court. But I expect Ingles to fit in later in the season. He's a decent catch and shoot 3-point shooter that can help when Giannis drives into the paint from a basketball perspective. But It's coming off from an ACL injury. I don't expect him to play that many minutes. But let's talk about Giannis, Drew. And that's kind of the only two guys who have a significant interest in. And it's Giannis, because anytime Giannis is on the slate, there could be some value that opens up where we're going to be looking to get above the field on a guy like him with his upside. Do you feel the same way about Giannis today? It's the Vegas total comes in only at 228. So Giannis is always going to be a good play. Share me your thoughts on Giannis.
Yeah, it's kind of just what it's been for a month or whatever now since DraftKings started pricing him above 12K. If I get to him, great. I think that, clearly he's one of the highest upside players on the slate anytime that he plays. And we do have plenty of value today, but it's still just, it's a 9-game slate. So you're going to have plenty of high upside mid-range guys that you can get to. So I like getting to Giannis, or I am happy getting to Giannis when I get there. I just don't know how much I'll actually get to. Typically, I haven't been getting a lot recently at these price tags, but it is an appealing, game environment. Golden State, New Orleans. Wait, they're playing New Orleans, right?
Yeah, Milwaukee's playing New Orleans.
Okay, I thought you had said Golden State. Never mind. So it's an appealing game environment. Happy to get to Giannis, just don't really know how much I can. Drew Holiday in tournaments is interesting to me. 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. Should play 34, 35 minutes, assuming this game's competitive. Price tag is getting up there at 8,600 though, so only pulling 7% ownership. But I'm with you. Those are the only two guys that I'm really interested in. Brook Lopez would be third, but still just think you're going to be able to find better center options.
Yeah, and that's really about it for this Milwaukee side of things. On to the New Orleans side we go. And this New Orleans team continues to be without, I believe, Brandon Ingram. He should be also close to returning, but not yet. And with him being out, I've been playing a lot of Zion Williamson, maybe a little too much at times. And CJ McCollum was great last game out, but he came down to earth against that Phoenix team on Saturday night. It's been McCollum and Williamson. I've always had most interest in going to them. And then Trey Murphy has always been the third guy I've been looking to go to because of his 3-point upside you can get on DraftKings. The minutes are somewhat more consistent in Trey Murphy than it is for Valanciunas and Herb Jones as well. But I really like taking some shots on Zion again because I do think he has tournament upside within him. And McCollum, he's not been as aggressive offensively of late, but he still also has it as long as Brandon Ingram is out. For me, it's going to go Zion, CJ, and then Trey Murphy. And I don't really have any interest in anyone else just because the minutes are not that great. And they could be messed around a little bit as well. It's a Milwaukee spot on the other side. Talk to me about the Pelicans.
So I think the best play from the Pels is Jovel. He's 5,100. Larry Nance is doubtful. Nance obviously has been taking a lot of minutes from Jovel. We have 2 games without Nance this season, 30 minutes in the first one, 20 in the second one. I'm pulling the second one up now because I don't remember if there was foul trouble or if anything weird happened. But you should just get more minutes from Jovel, which obviously is going to be appealing because his price tag is down to $5,100. So I think he stands out. Certainly like getting to Zion at 10-2. He played 39 minutes last game, which was very interesting to see. Typically, you're going to project around 34, but nice to know that he can go even higher than that. He's been about a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy. He's pulling 5% ownership. McCollum looks okay. He just hasn't played well this year. He's still been about a fantasy point per minute guy, though, and should play 35, 36 minutes. But Jovel at 5,100, I think, is going to be the easiest one for me to get to, and I will have that last game up in a second to try and figure out why he only played 20 minutes.
Yeah, the Valanciunas situation is something has been obviously very interesting throughout this season. And it feels like when he was in Toronto and was it the Dwayne Casey year where he just would play him for a certain extent, like 20 minutes would always be his minutes cap. But Valanciunas would be able to just like erupt at 5K or sometimes less than 5K and put up a number that mattered. So especially if Larry Nance isn't going to play, I do think the minutes, we can see them being a bit higher than usual for a guy like Valanciunas as well.
So in that game where he only played 20 minutes, it was just a game where he didn't play a lot. They closed with Zion at the 5. So the closing lineup in that game was Alvarado, who had started in place of McCollum, Jones, Murphy, Zion, and Dyson Daniels. So there is still, risk of him not getting a ton of minutes. He had some early foul trouble too, or he probably would have played a little bit more, but it does, not having Nance, I think you can expect at least 24, 25 minutes from Jovel, and certainly the potential for him to get a bit more.
Yeah, and I think he puts Valanciunas in a great tournament center spot tonight where I mean, if Valanciunas somehow plays 30 minutes, he could put up 40 fantasy points. He has that within him. And definitely in a situation with no Nance, that's another pathway he can pay that salary off. And we should be able to take advantage of that. And he's priced like not appropriately at a favorable point for that upside. So it's well worth taking some chances with him. But also keep in mind, the floor is 20 minutes, foul trouble, Giannis barreling in on the other side where he could struggle and be a dud on the slate. Any final thoughts on this New Orleans team? Is it anyone else on this team? Well, it probably is a little too cute to take some chances on, right? I mean, everyone else seems fine. Would it be
Yeah, I mean,
too
just given how much value we have elsewhere, I don't anticipate getting to a lot of like the Najee Marshall, Jose Alvarado type plays.
Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking the situation. Hernan Gomez, another
Oh
guy
yeah, that one's reasonable.
yeah, Hernan Gomez is someone, if he were to somehow play 20 minutes, he could put up mid 20 fantasy points. Maybe that would matter on a slate like today to get in some extra studs. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's really about it for this New Orleans team.
Yeah, so we don't have him in projections right now, so I'd forgotten to mention him. But yeah, he was the backup to Joe Val the last time Nance was out. You got 16 to 17 minutes from him. So I do think that's a reasonable option.
Yeah, no, definitely. Producer Jordan, that is a factual statement about Alvarado. But that's we'll move on to the next game we go. Next game is San Antonio taking on Houston. San Antonio played their last game in Mexico City, and now San Antonio is traveling up to Houston. This team is going to be without Jakob Poeltl did return last game. He was limited in his return, but I believe Romeo Langford and Keldon Johnson are questionable.
Yeah, they're both questionable. Josh Richardson is out.
Josh Richardson is out. And it's this San Antonio team with all these guys kind of like returning are priced appropriately. There was a time we were taking advantage of Zach Collins' price tag with Jakob Poeltl out, but it's Devin Vassell who I think has the highest ceiling. If Keldon Johnson is out. Now, if Keldon Johnson returns, I'll definitely have some interest in him. Trey Jones is just a very, very consistent producer. He'll get you high 20s, low 30s, but it doesn't seem like he'll get you low 40s. And that's just who Trey Jones is, it feels like. So it's a guy who I'm always kind of under the field on. And it's on a large slate like this, I think it's going to be a similar situation. But I like taking some chances on Vassell and Keldon Johnson if they play. If we get word Jakob Poeltl's a full go, I like him as a center spot as well. Talk to me about this Spurs team with these guys, a couple of these guys questionable and Richardson being out.
Yeah, so Vassell's the one that really stands out here. He's coming in at $7,100. He's back in the starting lineup, shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings. He's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute this year. He should play north of 30 minutes. It's a good matchup against Houston. So even if Keldon Johnson's in, Vassell's going to look good. If Keldon Johnson is out, Vassell looks even better. He's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Vassell on the floor this year. So one way or the other, I want to get to Devin Vassell. Keldon Johnson, like you said, if he's in, not pulling any ownership right now, but $8,000 in a good matchup, certainly would have some interest there. He's averaged 1.04 DraftKings points per minute this year. Poeltl was limited to 20 minutes in his start last time out. If we don't hear word, I'm going to assume he's playing like 24 minutes today, and that's not going to be enough for me to want to get to him at 6,800. But if we do get, Jakob Poeltl's just cleared for full run, then he does become interesting in this spot at 6,800. But with the way things look right now, Vassell's the clear priority for me. Keldon Johnson, if he's in, would be the second guy.
Yeah, and this is I think a fun tournament spot. Anytime any team playing Houston for me, I'm always my eyes perk up a little bit to get find some guys to get above the field on, because I feel like there's a pathway for multiple players to pay off their salary more nights than not. But it's a tournament build where I'm excited to take advantage of the situation and keep an eye on that questionable news there. Any final thoughts on San Antonio?
Nope.
On to the Houston side we go. And the Houston side, it's always going to be Porter and Green for me where I take a look at. And Alfred Şengün, I like going to him a little bit in certain matchups. And I don't mind going to him today. Sometimes those minutes are a little tough to pinpoint, but high usage guys in Jalen and Green always deserve some tournament mention. I've been talking about Jabari Smith Jr. I think slowly but surely he is proving why he was a top 3 overall pick. As those minutes go up, he's playing better as well. And sometimes those minutes have been a result of the reason why they're going up because of good play. And I don't mind taking some chances on some of these Houston guys, especially these 4 guys, Green, Porter, Alfred Şengün, and Jabari Smith. this team is fairly healthy. So it's tough to find like pricing mistakes, just tournament upside guys who I think one of these guys can certainly be really good in a San Antonio spot. Do you have a preference? For me, I always prefer Jalen Green to Kevin Porter Jr., and I think I'll be the same just because sometimes Green is priced cheaper, and I think sometimes he has more usage, but Porter distributes the ball, gets more fantasy points other ways. Talk to me about this Houston team, and do you have a preference in going to on one of these starters?
Yeah, so I mean, Porter and Green are always very, very similar to me. I typically prefer Porter by a little bit just because he does average slightly more fantasy points per minute, but it's about the same. Just a little bit less scoring dependent, similar usage, but really, I think both guys look good here, especially only separated by $200. Appealing matchup against San Antonio as well. 116 implied total for the Rockets. So happy to get to both of those guys. I think Şengün looks good at 6K as well. You're typically getting 27 to 28 minutes from Şengün. He's a 1.16 DraftKings point per minute guy. So, the best fantasy producer on the team. All three of those guys are pieces I'd like to build around. Jabari Smith, you mentioned the playing times coming up a bit recently as he has been playing better. He's 5,400. If you get those 32 to 34 minutes from him, he's going to look pretty good. Even with how poorly he's played for a lot of the year, he's averaging 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. And then now he has seemingly remembered how to play basketball. So I think you do see those rates continue to climb. So I think that the main three are Porter, Green, Şengün. Then I think there's a little bit of a drop off, but Jabari Smith still looks good. Eric Gordon at 3,700 is a terrible fantasy producer, but he should play 28 to 30 minutes. He's pulling 5% ownership. He's somebody where it's sort of just, a last piece in. You're not happy about it, but you could certainly do worse. But I think Porter, Şengün, Green are the clear priorities here.
Agreed. And I definitely think they might come in a little bit under, and we'll see how the ownership projections evolve throughout the day. If you guys want to get access to our ownership projections and much more, especially with an NFL showdown slate tonight and a single game slate over there with high price pools, take advantage of our 3-day trial that we have going. Producer Jordan can drop that in the chat, and also check out, it's in our description as well. Take advantage of this 3-day trial, and definitely take advantage of all the data and tools as they update throughout the day. And you'll get to make the best data-driven decisions for your lineup. So make sure to take advantage of that. And then we have a very new, exciting lineup generator that's been really awesome for many users as they've been able to customize and see what type of lineup builds that they like for their own lineups. And we have an export CSV option there as well, where you can simply upload your lineups that you like from the ones that you have saved. So take advantage of all these new tools and features that we have on the site. Also, shout out to our Price Pick sponsor, and there are some exciting player props here to take advantage of with Price Picks. As on the Houston side of things, there's a player prop for Kevin Porter Jr. with an assist line of 5. Right now, our data and tools team has him projected for 5.82, with the highest projected expected win percentage at 69%. Very nice. And take advantage of that Price Picks offer that we have going in that Kevin Porter Jr. prop line before the line moves. On to the next game we go, and it's a game where there's going to be a flurry of some tournament options here as well. Portland takes on Oklahoma City. Portland 7.5-point favorites against this OKC team at OKC. And the Portland side, it's Dame Lillard, someone who has steadily played off that price tag and has pretty much seeing Dame price above 10K this past week. It's been a while since it's been like that. Nurkic and Josh Hart were on the injury report for a little bit, but I think they're both expected to play. Jeremy Grant missed the game last game, and we'll see if that was kind of a rest situation. I do think they were on a back end of a back-to-back. We'll see if he goes today. Dame Lillard, I always have interest in a guy like him on FanDuel and DraftKings just because he always has tournament upside. He always seemingly feels to come in under own just because of his projection. He doesn't grade out always as the greatest point per dollar guy, but his OKC spot, he can certainly pay that off. As is guys like Yusuf Nurkic, who I think has been playing much better of late, getting a little bit more minutes than usual, as in more than he started off the season with. So I like going to Nurk. And Anthony Simons, another tournament upside guy where you get that 3-point bonus. He's a guy who can certainly get up shot volume, and that's something that I definitely look at. And Anthony Simons he's one like hot stretch away from putting up 40 fantasy points and getting you the 3-point bonus over there on DraftKings. Talk to me about this Portland team, especially against OKC, where this team might also come in a little bit underowned when it's all said and done. But I think there are some great tournament options here.
I think they're a really interesting tournament team, and it goes back to what you were saying about Dame, where they don't necessarily project the best at their respective salaries, and that's going to keep their ownership down. But you do have an appealing matchup here against OKC. It's a shorthanded OKC team as well, so likely to be even worse defensively, or be worse defensively than normal. And you have really high upside guys from the Blazers. The only guy pulling double-digit ownership, though, is Yusuf Nurkic at 6,700. I think he's a good play. I am a little concerned because OKC is going to end up being really small here. So I wouldn't be surprised if if this ended up being a game where Winslow ends up in the closing lineup over Nurkic, but that doesn't have to be the case. Like Nurkic should destroy this team while he's out there. So you could very easily see him just get full run and be really good. But again, that is my only minor concern with him is we have seen a lot of teams play small against OKC. And then now, today they don't have Robinson Earl. They don't have the big Jalen Williams. They're just shorthanded in the front court. So wouldn't be shocking if Nurkic kind of loses some minutes down the stretch, but at the same time, if he's playing really well, there's no real reason for them to do that. So overall, I think Nurkic looks good, very high upside play. But then nobody else here is really getting ownership. You have 6% coming into Simons, Lillard, and Hart. Lillard at 10.7. He's overpriced for his median projection, but somebody like Lillard is just so capable of getting hot and just taking over a game and being that guy that you really want in tournaments that he's pretty much always going to be appealing when he is this low owned. And Anthony Simons looks pretty appealing too. The price tag is slowly dropping on him. Clearly, he's not as good an option as when Damian Lillard was out, but 18 games with Lillard this year. Still 0.94 DraftKings points per minute for Simons, 26% usage rate, 34 minutes per game. The ceiling is there for him at 7,300 at low ownership. Clearly he's not going to hit it all that often because he is playing with Dame, but I do like the upside you get at that price tag. So Nurkic is the one that I think stands out. Simons and Lillard, both interesting tournament pieces. And then Josh Hart is kind of just like a playing time play. He's not particularly interesting on a point per minute basis. He's around 0.85 DraftKings points per minute, but should also play 34 plus minutes in this spot. So it's going to look pretty appealing or somewhat
Yeah,
appealing.
great tournament options across the board, and in an OKC spot where I definitely think certain maybe one or two guys can certainly outperform their price tag and find a way to the top. On the OKC side we go. This team, obviously, lots and lots of news here. Obviously, with no SGA today, no, I believe Giddy's also out as well. Yeah. So we were dealt with this situation again that we were dealt with on Saturday, where we went to these guys in significant tournament upside. The shocking point is they beat the Memphis Grizzlies that night straight up, as Ja Morant was ejected, I believe, right before halftime for a really bogus ejection, which was really annoying in terms of a DFS perspective. But Lou Dort was awesome that game. Pokashevsky got hurt, but he was on his way to being awesome as well. And Isaiah Joe, the guy paid off his salary, but I didn't think you ended up needing him when it was all said and done. At least on FanDuel, you didn't. He can shoot the three. He's a really good shooter, but it's Mark Dagnall. Outside of Lou Dort, yeah, it's just outside of Lou Dort. I don't know what the minutes are going to look like. I actually might feel a little bit more confident in Pokashevsky's minutes this game, just because I do think he was going to play a bit more if he doesn't get hurt there with that laceration. But everyone else, you can mix and match guys and kind of guess your way to finding some low and good value options here. So OKC team that all season long, I do think it's going to be really difficult to navigate, but their high usage guys are gone. A lot of guys who play a lot of minutes are gone. Jalen Williams, another guy who I think is talented offensively, put up an absolute shitstorm on Saturday. He was awful, but I think I'm willing to go back to him today just because I think the minutes should be there and he should take more shots.
And the big difference between today and Saturday is, unless I'm miscounting, they only have 9 players today. Saturday, they ran an 11-man rotation, but Trey Mann and the other Jalen Williams are both in the G League now, so they won't be there unless they have somebody on their roster that I'm not aware of. The only players that they have are Dort, Pokashevsky, Joe, Kenrich Williams, Jalen Williams, Wiggins, Omarui, Muscala, and Lindy Waters, which would give them 9. So you just have to get a more condensed rotation if that is going to be the case. Obviously, keep an eye on the injury report throughout the day. If you see Trey Mann and Jalen Williams suddenly not with the G League, then they're probably going to be in the rotation. But I think they are just supposed to be with the G League now. So you should have 9 guys here, which really opens up minutes in addition to all of the production that's available without SGA or Giddey. Very limited sample this year of neither of them being on the floor, but 98 minutes for Jalen Williams, 25% usage rate, 33% assist percentage. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy. Kenrich Williams at 0.88 DraftKings points per minute. Wiggins at 0.8. Poku's at 0.9. Dort 0.95 with a 33% usage rate. Granted, that's only in 36 minutes. But going back to last year, too, for Dort, you always saw a nice bump when SGA was out. I'm pulling those numbers back up now, but it's going to make Lou Dort look very good here. From an ownership standpoint, we have a lot of it coming in. Poku at 4,300, pulling 43%. Omaruri's pulling 38% on DraftKings. Isaiah Joe pulling 37%. I think all three of those make sense. We got Omaruri in the starting lineup last game. He only played 16 minutes, didn't play down the stretch. But again, you're taking 15 minutes away from the center position with Jalen Williams being out. So I do think you get more playing time from him. Isaiah Joe played 26 minutes. He's 4K. He's been a actually pretty solid fantasy producer this season in general. So I'm going to like him. Lou Dort, since the start of last year, where is he? Since the start of last year, without Giddey or SGA on the floor, 216 minutes, 28% usage rate, 0.87 DraftKings points per minute, but that's on 44% true shooting. So you can never guarantee Lou Dort's going to be efficient because that's not really who Lou Dort is. But that usage rate is massive, and if he knocks down shots, it just gives you a really high ceiling for somebody that's only $5,500. He's pulling 28% ownership. Jalen Williams pulling 18. Aaron Wiggins pulling 18 at 3,400. This whole team should be at least those 7 guys should be popular. Muscala and Lindy Waters are the only 2 not pulling ownership. I still think Lindy Waters is playable in large field tournaments. He's 3K flat. There is still enough volatility in these rotations where it shouldn't surprise anybody if Lindy Waters just steps into more minutes than are being projected. And he's played 339 minutes without SGA or Giddey since last year and averaged 0.9 DraftKings points per minute. So really the only thing separating Lindy Waters from guys like Kenrich Williams or Aaron Wiggins that are getting a lot more ownership is just guessing how many minutes they're going to play. And if there's one thing OKC's been consistent with this year, it's that you're not going to be right on guessing how many minutes everybody's going to play for this team. So I do think Lindy Waters at 2% ownership is a really interesting tournament flyer.
Yeah, this whole team is great tournament options across the board. Certainly 2 or 3 guys can be really good where you're just building around them and hopefully you're on that right combination come the end of the night. It's an OKC team that you got to pay attention with the news, so make sure you do that. And deeper dive in Live Before Lock, we'll break that down in more detail for sure as we get more news with injuries across the slate. Hit that like button for us, and thanks for joining us this Monday morning. On to the Dallas and Minnesota a game ago. Dallas is 3.5-point favorites taking on this Minnesota team with a 228 total. And Dallas last time we got there pretty much there. Kind of like a preseason run rotation. We saw Kemba Walker turn back the clock and Christian Wood light it up as that game went into overtime. But that doesn't matter today as Luka Doncic will return for this team. Most likely is my guess. We'll see. He's still, I believe, questionable, right? Last time I checked. Tim Hardaway is also questionable, as is Dwight Powell is also questionable. And I say that with kind of an interesting standpoint there because Maxi Kleba just had surgery where he's going to be gone for a long time. And if Dwight Powell is out, we might get JaVale McGee start and play a little bit more minutes than we kind of expect potentially. Maybe he just eats up all Powell's minutes and plays around 20. But if Luka plays, it's Luka Doncic in a Minnesota spot, which he looks completely fine. Christian Wood, another solid option as well. Dinwiddie, I think is just always kind of falls under the field. It's tough for me to go to Dinwiddie, depending on price tag here. But it's another team that's with a lot of questionable options here where minutes could open up. If Luka were to say this team looks completely different, I would expect Kemba Walker to start again and kind of get the run that he got last time out. But we'll see what that ends up happening. I do think Luka will play. That's just a gut right now. And with him playing, it's really just Luka for me. And maybe I'll sprinkle in some JaVale McGee. Can we go back to Christian Wood? Is probably the question I have. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think so. We got Wood starting in place of Powell last game. He played like 1 million minutes. Powell questionable here. But even if Powell's back, I expect that you're just going to see 16 minutes from Powell and then like 32 from Christian Wood off the bench. He has power forward eligibility now as well, so I still like getting the Christian Wood. He's also only pulling 7% ownership, so I like that. Luka, if he's in Giannis territory where he's going to project as either the best or second best option on the slate. And if you can get to him, great, but it does just kind of become difficult because of how expensive he is. But you do have plenty of value from OKC to get to him if you want to. So that's going to look pretty good. So I think Christian Wood and Luka would be the two that I'm most interested in getting to. 6,600 for Dinwiddie would look reasonable as well. I think you do see him play a little bit more with Maxey out, obviously different positions, but I think you just see a little bit more condensed rotation from Dallas, and that's going to make Dinwiddie look a little bit better. Same goes for Hardaway at 5,300, but to me, Luka and Christian Wood are the two guys I really want to get to. And if Powell's out, like I said, Wood started last game, played like 38 minutes in regulation.
Yeah, no, I think that looks completely solid there. And yeah, I think Christian Wood a little bit more interest, more that I look into a little bit deeper right now. I think certainly a great option to take advantage of here. But yeah, a lot of questionable pieces here. Hopefully we get to look at news potentially a little earlier, but if we don't, that's going to make for a very, very interesting late swap situation because as this is one of the later games in the night, I believe. Yeah. On to the Minnesota side we go. This team also, no Karl Anthony Towns remains to be out. Rudy Gobert has missed the last couple of games with an ankle injury. And then yesterday, Anthony Edwards was solid, but Naz Reid didn't play that many minutes. I believe Naz Reid got hurt and is the reason why he didn't play that many minutes. And then Nathan Knight really kind of erupted there and was outstanding if you played him, but I didn't play the slate last night. But with a couple guys questionable here, D'Angelo Russell did return, so the Jalen Noel value option kind of got diminished there. But Anthony Edwards, Russell, slow-mo, I'll have interest in Gobert if he's going to play, but I don't know. If Gobert and Naz Reid are out, I'm excited to play Nathan Knight. We'll see what that situation can look like, but Nathan Knight, a really good fantasy point per minute guy, 1 given minutes. I will have some interest in going to him. But this is difficult. Do you have a lean if both of these guys are in or out? It seems like 50-50 across the board.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see the play where Naz Reid got hurt. I saw a lot of people saying it didn't seem like it should have been that bad, and then he just never came back. So I don't know. But whoever's starting at center for Minnesota, I'm going to like. If it's Rudy Gobert at 7,500, clearly that's a different type of play than Naz Reid or Nathan Knight. But 7,500 for Gobert would look pretty appealing. It's not a good matchup against Dallas in general, very slow paced team, but you still have a 112 implied total for Minnesota. And if Gobert is back, I assume he's not going to be limited. He wasn't out that long, so he would look good. If Gobert is out and you get Naz Reid starting at 4,700, just go right back to him. Obviously, you can't really read anything into yesterday. He got hurt. Can't do anything about that. He had played like 36 minutes in his first start. Since the start of last year going into yesterday, he had averaged 28 and a half minutes per game as a starter. I think you kind of project 30, 32 minutes for him, and it just makes him look really good as someone that produces well over a fantasy point per minute. If he is also out, then yeah, I assume Nathan Knight's going to start. The rotation yesterday was kind of interesting because 2 games ago, Nathan Knight was the straight backup to Naz Reid. Yesterday, Luka Garza was actually the immediate backup to Reid, and then when Reid got hurt, they went to Nathan Knight, and he took the Reid role. So I assume that if Reid's out, you're getting Nathan Knight starting. And like you said, he's a very good point per minute guy. We saw this with Atlanta previously. When he got minutes, he'd be really good. If he is starting at minimum salary, he's going to look great. If they went to Luka Garza, he would look fine as well, but I think he'd be a little bit riskier than Knight. But this is just a spot where we need more information. But whoever is starting at center, I think is going to look good. If it's Gobert, it's more of like a, piece that you're just mixing in here and there. If it's Reid or Knight, I expect them to just be like my highest owned players. Outside of that, Anthony Edwards at 9K is going to look fine. D'Angelo Russell at 7,600 looks good, assuming Russell goes. He was questionable to play yesterday. He came back. Don't know yet if he's playing today, but I assume for now that he's going to. We have seen increased playing time from him with Jordan McLaughlin out. Don't know if McLaughlin will play today since we don't have an injury report, but if he's out, you can continue projecting Russell for 34 plus minutes, and it's going to make him look pretty good. Anthony Edwards sees a nice bump in production without Karl Anthony Towns. He's getting 6% ownership at 9K. Don't think he's a priority, but I do think he's a very high upside option.
On to the next game we go. Lakers on a back end of a back-to-back, taking on a Phoenix team. This Lakers team, no Anthony Davis for a month as he had a foot injury, and that's going to take him out for some time. And That's going to make LeBron James really exciting to go to. And they almost blew a big lead against this Wizards team last night, but they, I think, scaped away with the victory. The minutes were really difficult to pinpoint here as Westbrook played less than 30 minutes. I think he only played like 24 out the top of my
23, yeah.
23. It's LeBron James, Thomas Bryant, who played a lot of minutes. And I like taking some chances on Thomas Bryant if those minutes are going to be well above 30 consistently. I just don't know if that's going to be the case. We might get some LeBron at the 5 at times, but I'm not too sure. Maybe you're going to man up with a Thomas Bryant a decent amount going forward with no Anthony Davis. Dennis Schroeder fouled out. I liked his minutes, and I think I'm going to take some chances with Schroeder for sure. I don't know. Russ Westbrook's minutes are so hard to predict at times. I feel like they just roll him out when he's riding hot and then sit him on the bench when he's cold. But the one thing that is that's really important here, I believe Pat Beverly is questionable. So maybe his minutes are a little safer than usual. But we saw Austin Reeves get the start last game. He's okay. Man, this on a Phoenix matchup, it's just LeBron James for me. They are 9.5-point dogs, 231 total. Talk to me about the Lakers situation with no AD. It's not as fun as I once thought it could be.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the two pieces that stand out for sure are LeBron and Bryant. $10,000 price tag for LeBron, small forward and power forward eligible. Thomas Bryant, center only, coming in at 4,200. But, he is a good point per minute guy. And we've just seen him play big minutes when Anthony Davis is out. Even if you don't want to project 30, let's say you go 28 or 30, or even if you don't want to project the 32 he played last game, even if you go 28 or 30, he's still going to look like a very good point per dollar option. LeBron obviously sees increased production without Anthony Davis on the floor. So it's going to make him look really good. Both of those guys pulling 20 to 30% ownership. Westbrook to me is still interesting in tournaments at 7,300. He only played 23 minutes last game, like you said, but even with Anthony Davis in, he's typically, or at least in a lot of games, he's giving you, 28 minutes or so. He's been very, very good from a fantasy standpoint off the bench. And overall this year, without Davis on the floor, you have 1.2 DraftKings points per minute from Westbrook. At low ownership, I like going back to Westbrook here and hoping that, you do get that big game out of him. Then you get to the value pieces where it's tough to ever be excited about Lonnie Walker or Dennis Schroeder or Austin Reeves or Pat Beverly, but the minutes should be there. Beverly, assuming he's questionable, he missed yesterday's game. But Dennis Schroeder without Davis on the floor, 0.9 DraftKings points per minute this year. Lonnie Walker's at 0.77. Austin Reeves at 0.69. Just not Beverly's at 0.6. Like, you're just not going to be excited about those guys, but they are cheap. They are likely to give you enough minutes to be decent, but they also aren't priorities because you have the OKC value that just looks so much better.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the situation. I don't expect a starting lineup change, but you never know as this team continues to find a way to play without Anthony Davis. Onto the Phoenix side we go. There is Devin Booker, who put up 58 real-life points last time, which was a really impressive performance. He is questionable from what I last checked. Chris Paul is ready to go. He'll be playing. DeAndre Ayton didn't play last game. He's also questionable. So injury news here as well, where things can really change the slate. And you got to keep an eye on the situation here. If Booker is going to be out, it'll improve everyone else on this team. Another important piece of news here, Cam Payne is also out as well. So a lot of minutes going to guys like Shamet, Lee, Torrey Craig, Okogie if Booker is out. Okogie's seems like fully in the rotation now. From what it seems like, he was played quite a bit in the other game with no DeAndre Ayton there. Mikal Bridges' minutes will be always fine. Tough situation here to really break down if Booker, right now with Booker being questionable and Ayton also being questionable. But share me your thoughts on the Suns. It's a Lakers matchup where it should be pretty favorable for this team.
Yeah, so if Booker and Ayton are in, to me, they're both just like solid tournament plays. Booker coming in at 9,500, Ayton at 7,700. We have them both projected with about a 10% chance of being optimal. So, guys that you're going to just mix in for their upside. But Chris Paul at 8,100, I do think is interesting with or without Booker, but he'll certainly look better if Booker is out. Cam Payne being out means more minutes for Chris Paul. You're typically getting 35, 36 minutes from him without Payne. And so it does make him look like a pretty solid option here. And then you would just expect his production to go up if Devin Booker is out. One piece that could be really interesting is Bismack Biyombo. If Ayton misses this game, Biyombo has started whenever Ayton's been out this year, and you've gotten a mix between him and Jack Lando, where they're splitting 48 minutes. Biyombo, when he's in foul trouble, Lando plays more. When he's not in foul trouble, you get a rotation like last game where Biyombo played 31 and Lando only played 16 and a half. But Jack Landale is also out today. So you don't even have that backup center for Biyombo. It makes those minutes look even more secure if DeAndre Ayton is out. Biyombo's only 3,900. I assume that you would get Dario Saric as the backup center, but it would make me feel really good about Biyombo's minutes if Ayton misses this game. Josh Okogie, like you said, he is playing normal minutes here. He's 4,100. Still not somebody I really want to get to all that much. Played like 8 minutes in the first half last game, then played the final 15, 16 minutes of the game. I just don't think that's a normal rotation. You didn't see Torrey Craig come back in the fourth quarter. Obviously, it can happen, but I think more often than not, you're getting like 16, 18 minutes from Okogie. So not overly interested there, but I am interested in the backcourt and then also Bismack Biyombo if Ayton is out, and I like Ayton if Ayton is in.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's a great breakdown there. Keep an eye on the new situation here. One of the last games on the slate, but the highest total on the slate is next, and Charlotte taking on Sacramento. Charlotte is 10-point dogs going to Sacramento, and the Charlotte team got the return of LaMelo Ball here, and LaMelo Ball being back certainly changes the situation here. But I believe Terry Rozier is questionable here, where things can definitely open up for other guys such as Kelly Oubre, Gordon Hayward, and PJ Washington would be the guys who I'm taking a look at. And I really like going to LaMelo Ball. Great game environment. Certainly the minutes have been pretty solid from returning from a lower body injury. If Rozier is out, I'll have interest in guys like Oubre and Hayward for sure, just because of the game environment, high total. And I think these guys make for excellent tournament options. I mean, you can argue even taking a chance on Mason Plumlee, that might be a little too gross, but even PJ Washington, maybe. But it's such a great game environment. I think we're going to get to some of these Hornets players in some sort of significant fashion.
Yeah, I think LaMelo is the one that really stands out here coming in at 8,400. He's the only guy on this team pulling ownership at about 19%. Played 36 minutes last game. You've consistently seen him basically on track to play around 34 minutes as long as he avoids foul trouble. Clearly can play a little bit more if that's the case. So it makes him look really good at 8,400. Just a very high upside option. Outside of that, I don't have a ton of interest. Hayward coming in at 6K. He did play 35 minutes yesterday, so that's good to see. Don't know if he will play today or not. With it being a back-to-back, wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. Rozier got hurt yesterday, so don't know if he's going to play. If either of those guys are out, you should get Kelly Oubre back in the starting lineup at 7,500. That is sort of interesting. He played 35 minutes yesterday, started the second half in place of Rozier. But remember, when Hayward was out previously, you were getting 37, 38 minutes consistently from Kelly Oubre. So if Rozier and or Hayward are out and you get Oubre back in the starting lineup, I do think that he's going to look like a pretty appealing option at 7,500 to get to in tournaments.
Yeah, no, I think definitely LaMelo Ball leads the way there in terms of interest. But no, I have no issues if you want to sprinkle in a little aggressively on some other guys on this team, depending on the Rozier situation. If Rozier were to play, I'll have some interest in him for sure. On the Sacramento side, we go. It's Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. This team is kind of fully healthy here. So, no real important rotation guys on the injury report as we speak. Sabonis and Fox look like outstanding options here. As does Kevin Huerter, maybe a tournament option there. But everyone else, Malik Monk always has kind of that tournament microwave ceiling to him. Keegan Murray's minutes are inconsistent to really go there. The minutes have been better of late, but his production has been very inconsistent. But it's a great game environment where I like getting above the field on a couple of these Sacramento guys for sure, especially Sabonis and Fox. I think this is a great spot for them, and I think the field might not react to them as much as I am. So I like getting to them a little bit above the field. It's all going to be news dependent by the time the slate locks. But talking about these Kings, great game environment, great game total as well. So I think you're going to have some interest, right?
Yeah, and I'm with you, Sabonis and Fox being the priorities here. The one thing that could change, so like right now, Sabonis is pulling 26% ownership. He's 9,600 center only on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he has power forward eligibility as well, so he's just going to look good no matter what. On DraftKings, the interest in Sabonis kind of has to come down a bit if you were to get like DeAndre Ayton ruled out and Rudy Gobert ruled out, because then you're just getting these really good values in Naz Reid and Bismack Biyombo, or in Nathan Knight and Bismack Biyombo, depending on how that news breaks. But right now, if you assume Ayton is in and you assume Gobert is in, Sabonis looks really, really good. It's a really favorable matchup against Charlotte. He's playing huge minutes too when he avoids foul trouble, coming off of a game where he played 40.9 minutes against the Pistons. He's averaged 1.33 DraftKings points per minute this season. And this is also a slate where, if you do avoid those center injuries, the opportunity cost of the position, it's still there, but it's not as high as it normally is. So, because, you don't have Jokic, you don't have Embiid, or you do have Embiid, but you don't have Jokic. So I think it's a little bit easier to get to Sabonis as well. And then that playing time's just been great. De'Aaron Fox has been playing more minutes recently also. Davion Mitchell is back today, so that could cut into Fox's minutes from last game where he played 39 and a half, but we had seen him play a lot in the game before that as well, and he's only $8,300. He's averaged 1.23 DraftKings points per minute this year, so both of those guys look really good. Then you get to Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray. They're all sort of just last piece in type guys, pulling 5 to 10% ownership. It's still a good spot. They still all can have good games, but they look a lot more similar to players around them and don't stand out as much as Fox and Sabonis do.
Yeah, and I think this is just a great game environment to take advantage of. And with so many late night news, I think maybe come the end of the night, these guys will get enough ownership because maybe people are going to be backlogging their salary for this potential game environment and the late news that we have from starting with Portland and OKC all the way down to this game. So we'll see what that ends up going. And everyone, thanks so much for joining us on Monday morning. If you guys are listening on podcasts, hit that 5-star review. And everyone on YouTube, hit that like button for us. This was a ton of fun, Adam. Good luck today. And good luck to everyone who's viewing us, and have a great Monday.